Please, what is that? Don't tell me. It's all in the Reflexes.
You're listening to All in the Reflexes, an unrepentant vivisection of geek news and culture.
It's all in the Reflexes.
With the comedy rock geek Mikey Mason, the Brack of all trades Jeb Brack, Madison Metricula Roberts, and tech guy Steve.
It's all in the Reflexes.
I know, there's a problem with this.
Hey everybody, welcome to All in the Reflexes. I am your host, Madison Metricula Roberts, joined by...
Tech guy Steve.
All right, well, let's see what kind of announcements we have going on this week.
There was something from Jeb, who hasn't been able to join us tonight. But if you remember, he worked with Jason Brick on a book called Random Encounters, and it was these little, 2-page idea snippets that were perfect for tabletop role players. You and I read it, or at least read part of it and helped review it. But they're working on a second season, and they build it up over the course of a year, that they put them all together and publish it as an anthology. And so they're inviting everybody to join them over on the Facebook group, or you can follow them on Instagram, and we'll put all this in the show notes. Their Instagram account is Random Encounters Books, plural.
Yeah, it was really cool discussions, too, over the last year or
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, wonderful little seeds. It was a great... literally, they're organized by topic. You can flip to that section, and they're little, 2-page spread each. So it's extremely quick, and they give you this a great idea to, something to add to the game, a new take on it, a different spin, very digestible stuff. And so that's still available on Amazon, but they're now working on, season 2.
Well, that's awesome. So in personal news, I did my first open mic last night. I've been performing for 5-6 years at nerd kind of events, and I did my first normie open mic, and it was fine. I was like, well, I'm Metricula and I sing country songs about Dungeons and Dragons, and just kind of went with it. And then the second one,
how did they take it? How did they take it?
They were like, well, I was the only person that was kind of. There was a lot of very delicate, folky, pop folk singer songwriter shoegazy stuff.
Okay.
And I'm kind of brassy, I guess is a nice way to say it. But they went fine. And then the second one I did a parody. I do this. I won't be too graphic here, but I do a parody of Wagon Wheel called Spank Me Daddy, about BDSM. And I didn't intro it. I was like, you might recognize the tune. Feel free to sing along. And I just kind of went into it. It took them a verse to kind of figure out what was going on. And then it was fun to watch their faces kind of understand. And some people were singing along. They just really, people got into it. But they told me maybe I should come back on the comedy open mic night instead.
Well, that makes sense.
I mean, not instead, but they were like, you should come to that one. I'm like, okay. It was really fun. But it was fun. I had a good time. And there was another woman there that I had used to work with when I was a barista, and it was like, oh my gosh, you're here. And she had just started it was her first night there too. So it was nice to have some buddies to kind of team up. So. Great.
And I imagine the courage it takes to stand in front of not just a room full of strangers, but a room full of non-geek strangers.
Yeah, it was an interesting
try
experiment.
Out your material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was fine.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So, when I was at Fear the Con 2018, the Fear the Boot convention in St. Louis, they had a vendor room set up with some vendors, and they were selling all kinds of interesting things. But one of them was this woman, her business name was Gels Journals, and she was selling these custom writing journals, and then she had custom spell books. I don't play D&D currently. I haven't played it in a couple years. But you'd get a book for your character type. So you tell her, I'm playing a bard, and she hands you this leather-bound, craft paper, professionally printed book of all of the bard spells.
Oh,
wow. Yeah, really cool stuff. The people who do play D&D loved it.
Oh, sure.
But she also had these items there called dragon eggs. And she had them in kind of like an Easter basket, and they looked like scaled eggs, and they actually have some heft to them.
Oh, wow. I'm looking at the picture. It's detailed.
Yeah, I liked it, except the ones she had were done up in like pastel colors, like pastel blue and pink and lavender swirls with glitter. And I'm like, no, I can't really see putting this on my desk at work. Which my wife is teased me about. She's like, if you were more, confident in your masculinity, you wouldn't have a problem with this. And I'm like, yeah, maybe or maybe not, but it definitely does not go with my aesthetic.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, if it's not your style, it's not your style, even if the object itself is cool, right?
Yeah. So what I did is I took her business card, and then, like a month later, I contacted her, and I asked her, I would like one of these, but I just want plain. Like, can you just leave it brass? And then we went back and forth. She did some experimenting, ran into a couple problems. It ended up painting it gold, and then I covered it with this acrylic layer. And I'm pretty happy with it. I don't know if the photo really does it justice. It looks like an egg with like golden scales, and it's pretty cool. The secret is that they're thumbtacks.
Really?
So the base, I believe,
guessed.
is wood. Yeah, I know. I didn't figure it out either until I had one in my hand to examine. So I think the inside is a egg-shaped piece of wood, and she gently taps in hundreds and hundreds of thumbtacks overlapping to create that effect, and I think it's pretty cool. So I got my own custom one shipped to the house, and I wanted to, first I'm very happy with it. I took it to work, I set it on my desk, it's an object of interest that people could talk about, and I just thought it was cool that she was willing to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw her contact information and her business card stuff in the show notes if anyone else is interested. Her big claim to fame and the things she sells through her website are these books, the custom writing journals and the custom spell books. But she also does things like these custom eggs. Well, I thought that was pretty cool.
That is so cool. Well, with that, should we move on to the news?
And now for some more bad news. Ready?
So we haven't recorded in a while, and so some of these might be, a couple weeks out, but we wanted to mention some people who have passed. One of the most prominent is Burt Reynolds. You may know him from such hits as Smokey and the Bandit, and It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, and many others. He's known for his machismo and his mustachio.
It's true.
At one time, I believe it was in the 80s, I think, he was the highest paid actor in all of Hollywood. Anyways, he died at age 82. He was originally from Michigan, but grew up in Florida. He had a really nice obituary write-up, and we'll have a link to it. And it also talks about, not everything was peaches and roses here. He was known for some difficult dramas and a messy divorce and, a lot of stuff. His life was a lot of up and down, and it pretty fairly covers it.
Yeah.
There's also, very young man. He was only 26, but, Pittsburgh native rapper Mac Miller, dead of an apparent overdose. I didn't personally know him. I don't listen to that kind of music, but he had a following. He was popular, and he's only 26 years old, for goodness sake.
He used to date Ariana Grande.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. I care a lot more about Ariana Grande now that she's dating my fave, Pete Davidson.
Oh,
But,
okay.
No, it is anytime there's someone so young, it's just like, oh man.
It's tragic. Yeah. Absolutely. And then again, for the olds, like me, it was, Bill Daly, who starred in I Dream of Jeannie, died at the age of 91. He also starred in Bewitched and the Mary Tyler Shore, the Bob Newhart Show. A lot of stuff I watched as a very young boy. It was still on TV, or some of it was in syndication by that point. But, that actor died, and some people may know him. In other news, I don't usually cover this stuff. This is a new kind of a, not entertainment related, but it was crazy because it happened right next to me. So I live in Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, and I don't know what it is, 40, 50 miles away in Andover, probably less than 50 miles. They had a terrible thing. It's overpressurized gas line because of some mistake made by the gas company. And so natural gas was leaking out of these valves into people's homes, and as it touched an ignition source like a spark or a source of heat, it would burst into flame. And the numbers kept climbing all night long. Over 70 houses were on fire almost simultaneously. So the firefighters were completely overwhelmed. All the nearby communities, firefighters came in to help, and then the call kept going out. They said there were firefighters from over an hour drive away coming in, and they still couldn't keep up with it all.
Oh my God.
There was at least one house they showed had burned unattended for well over an hour before there was a free crew available to go and try to put it out.
That's
Isn't that nuts?
heartbreaking and terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely terrifying. They ended up turning off the gas for the entire town. They turned off all the electricity for the entire town to reduce the chance of an ignition. And then they had a mandatory evacuation of like 8,500 people. And everybody was just like, I have a quote from this Andover fire chief, Michael Mansfield, said, "It looked like Armageddon. It really did. There were billows of smoke coming from Lawrence behind me. I could see plumes of smoke in front of me within the town of Andover. It looked like an absolute war zone." He also says in his 39-year career, he has never seen anything like this, ever.
Wow.
So there were a handful of injuries, and then one young man died, 18. It was when the fire caused the chimney to collapse on him, and the collapse is what killed him. But it's just literally, like, unbelievable.
Man. Well, I hope so. It's under control now, though, right?
It is, but they even had fires the next day and the day after that.
Oh.
It's hard to, they literally have to inspect every single house attached to that line. There's like 1,500 houses. One at a time have to be inspected to make sure there's not a gas leak or that the valves aren't damaged from the overpressure.
Wow.
So,
man, well, it's hard to transition from that, but I have a little FBI block for us. In other news, the FBI has recovered the stolen Wizard of Oz slippers that were taken from a 2005 burglary in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, I believe.
the only thing that would make it better is if they actually took them off the feet of some witch underneath the house.
Who stole them, yeah. So it's the ruby red slippers that were worn by Judy Garland in the filming, and these were called the traveling pair because they'd been seen by so many people as it was in different displays. But they recovered it during a sting operation, so it's a really interesting little piece of Americana that's just keeps coming up. You know, I remember like being a kid and stuff. And
was that like 80 years ago or something?
Yeah. Like, I remember, like, going to, like, they had some of the other pairs in the Smithsonian American History Museum, you know, in, like, the pop culture sections. And it's like, you just, I don't know, like, it's just, for a lot of people, I think the Wizard of Oz film is just such a touchstone and so timeless, even for, like, kids today. It's still really popular just because it's colorful and weird, you know? So.
Yeah.
Well, in our second FBI block story, so this is like, we're getting into my territory. Y'all know that I have a conspiracy theory indulgence, I think is a gentle way to say it. There was an FBI, like, lockdown of the National Solar Observatory, and there's, like, with no explanation. So one, I don't know why this would have happened, but whatever. And it's near Sunspot, New Mexico. But what I think is great is that the internet, since there's not like a lot of like info on it, the internet is like ready to go with conspiracy theories on YouTube. Is it aliens? Is it an impending solar storm? Is it like there's just, I started, so we have a link to a video of somebody in the show notes that was expounding on it. But like, I'm thinking like, you know, it's always these desert things, you know, like so what kind of aliens we got this time? I don't know.
It's literally like the start of a movie. Literally. They said the FBI swooped in on both the ground and Black Hawk helicopters, immediately cordoned off the area and evacuated it, and then have the entire solar observatory, i.e. is looking up at the sun, blocked off for national security reasons, no other explanation.
Sun aliens.
And usually this is the first 5 minutes of the movie, and then the next scene is the president's on the line with some scientific expert who never thought he'd get the call.
Yeah, and then and then there's a kid that lives in the town, and he's just like a normal everyday person, but he comes across something, and then we
something
have
weird.
Yeah, and then we have like a Super 8 ET situation, you know.
Well, it depends. Is the kid a normal everyday kid, or is he a normal everyday kid who's also an astronomy buff? Who can converse with and provide the insight to the scientist who never thought he'd get the call.
Yeah, I don't know.
But his classmate, who he has a crush on, is this super cute girl who's also a computer hacker.
Yes, she's really good at fake typing.
Yeah, and at some point she will say, "I'm in."
Yeah, I'm in. I'm into the weird FBI hacker system. This is great. So.
I'll be curious to find out what that's all about if we ever do.
Yeah. The current prevalent theory is that they caught someone potentially China spying. Someone set something up on the antennas, or it was hacked into, because it's got an array of antennas. And I guess it overlooks a plane with a military base below. And so that's all confirmed. So people are wondering, like, did someone set up a way to monitor the military base through this? We don't know. It's speculation, but that sounds more likely than, killer solar wave or, or alien landing.
I will do my best to study conspiracy Twitter and YouTube and give you a summary of what has happened. So,
because they're often wacky, but sometimes there's a kernel of truth, and they hit on the correct answer. So
interesting.
Yeah. In other, spy news. I don't know if you remember, it was a couple years ago, Sony Pictures got their email hacked, files and email, and a bunch of stuff was released, which was embarrassing to them, including their negotiations for money with different movie stars, which showed a pay disparity, some of the executives saying very nasty things about the stars that they were praising in public, and a bunch of other stuff.
It was a mess.
Yes, and at the time, the theory was that it was a North Korean hacker, but then, of course, there was no way to prove it, and then the rumors were that it was a disgruntled employee, and blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? The FBI didn't stop the investigation, and it has been winnowed down to North Korea. And they've actually, I guess, issued, they've identified who it is, who they'd like to arrest, which, of course, they can't do that, because North Korea doesn't extradite, especially their own citizens. But they have the evidence. They also said it was a series of online bank heists, including $81 million from Bangladesh's national bank, is also involved. It was a significant hacking effort. Yeah.
Well, listen. So talking about Sony Pictures, movie, TV news, I have some Emmy updates because I am a vapid millennial and I love dresses. So that's my favorite part of all these awards shows. Man, it's like the fashion, and it just gets weirder, and I love it. But just some highlights for nerdy folks. Rick and Morty won an Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program.
Yeah, and I heard they actually presented. They projected them on screen and had them do a presentation or something.
Oh, man. I did not watch that part because that wasn't as interesting as the red carpet.
Yeah.
But, regardless of how you feel about Rick and Morty, anytime there's interesting adult animation, I think is just really cool, because I feel like some of the current, like the old guard classics that are still running are kind of stale right now, like your South Parks and your Simpsons and your Family Guys. So that's really cool. And also the sci-fi anthology Black Mirror got a TV movie Emmy for a kind of Donald Trump style dystopia thing called USS Callister. So that's another good, it's really encouraging when some of these sci-fi and both of these are sci-fi programs that are getting more recognition. So I think that's a really interesting, actually, brief aside, I'm going to a sci-fi convention this weekend, and I was at the liquor store stocking up like you do. And I was talking to the guys at the checkout, and it was like, oh yeah, I'm going to a sci-fi convention, and and they were like, oh, that's so cool. I'm like, yeah, it's like a big nerdy party. And one of the guys was like, well, not everyone that likes sci-fi is a nerd. And I was like, because he's like, it's everywhere now. And I was like, you know what? You're right. That is so crazy. It's so awesome that it's again, it's just this reinforcement that it's because he was talking about being really into Iron Fist and Black Panther and how cool that was and all this stuff and really into, and it was just that is so cool that it's what we
mainstream.
Yeah. And it's awesome because you can just have comic book discussions with any cashier, it's cool stuff. So
I liked it. I liked it when it was still underground.
Hipster. I hear a little buddy. I should. Well, if you want to bring y'all's dogs in, I can bring in Icarus, my cockatiel, and he'll let us know his opinions as well, and we could. Oh, y'all. I don't want to give away any possible April Fool's ideas, but just an AITR, just the pets.
Oh, man. So, let's talk about the DC Extended Universe. I know we kind of have to. It's not been a favorite of most of us on here. But it looks like Henry Cavill, who is Superman in that series, has bowed out. Not going to be Superman anymore. The Hollywood Reporter says that Warner Brothers was trying to get him signed for a cameo in the upcoming Shazam, but negotiations seems to have broken down, and it looks like he's going to be leaving the blue tights and the cape. But thanks to the magic of CGI, his upper lip will still appear in future DC movies.
It will always be with us.
So keep a stiff upper lip, Henry.
Henry Cavill, I mean, like, those, again, I don't want to get, like, all into it. Maybe we can get into it later, but it's, like, it's just such a shame that so much of the DCEU is just not that interesting.
Even though the cast I thought was really good.
Yeah.
I liked him as Superman. I liked Affleck as Batman. I never had a problem with him.
The casting has actually been pretty good.
They weren't given much to work with.
The conventional wisdom is that the DCEU really stuck it to Henry Cavill by not giving him good stuff to do as Superman. That he was a good Superman and looked the part.
Yeah. But what was the direction? Okay, look more miserable.
Yeah.
Okay, stare off in the distance, and then kind of emote the complete loss of all hope in humanity.
They've continually tried to recapture the like grimdark Nolan Batman movie stuff, and it's like, I'm sorry, like you can have like kind of a more quote unquote realistic setting, but it's like, I mean, like Aquaman. It's hard to imagine Aquaman existing in the same universe as the Nolan Batman. You know, and I'm not ragging on Aquaman or Wonder Woman, you know, like these fantastical, I don't know. So that's, I don't know. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And then in other news of stuff falling apart, it looks like the second season of American Gods is coming to pieces. Have you guys watched it? Have you seen it at all?
I watched the first season. I was a big fan of the book, but and the first season was okay. It was okay. But I also was wondering, same as my wife, is like, where's it? Why didn't it come back? What's taking so long?
Yeah, because it came, 2 years ago?
Well, what's happened is that both of the showrunners, Brian Fuller and Michael Green, quit the series back in November, saying they wanted a bigger budget than what the production company would give them. Then Gillian Anderson quit because she only wanted to work with one of the showrunners. And there's some rumors that Neil Gaiman himself was butting heads with them because they were looking to steer away from his book. And there was news that it had worked itself out, but there is still other rumors swirling around that the new showrunner is not working out. So it's in limbo right now, if that's not too on the nose for American Gods. But so I don't know if we'll see a second season now. You know, just it's a shame Mikey couldn't be here to comment. I know he had pretty strong feelings about the book for sure, just like you, Steve. But and I think that he said pretty much, the series, it's fine.
Yeah,
and it's you know, if you like, I think just let me speak for him. I feel like he said in the past too. It's like if you look at it as like a different thing, it's because it's a different medium, it's a different translation,
it's a different time,
and it can still be So
absolutely,
yep. And it always has the potential to draw people to go read the book. And I know that there is an American Gods comic book series that's ongoing. I don't buy it. But so it definitely has gotten more interest in the property and the ideas. And I think Neil Gaiman has a lot more control over the comic book than what's been happening in the TV show.
So let us move along. Since I have officially rejoined the cast, we can go trash some trailers.
This will make for one epic trailer.
And or tout them. I don't know.
That's right. I
like that positive attitude. You're like, no, or
well, we can try. Actually, I saw both of the trailers we're going to talk about in the theater last night. I've been in New York City with a friend, and he had not seen Crazy Rich Asians. And so I went to see it for a second time with him. Oh yeah, it's a good rom-com. It has its problems like rom-coms do, but it was one of the more winning rom-coms I've ever seen.
Yeah, if you're at all a rom-com person, it's got I think one of my favorite parts about it was that it had such a broad, it didn't just have the two mains and then their best friends. It had a broad cast of wacky characters.
That's true. But
it was just colorful.
That's not really what we're here
fun.
to talk about. What we're here to talk about is the trailers that I saw and that you guys have also
I was
seen.
just so excited.
For instance, I saw not one but two trailers for A Star Is Born with the first, and they bookended 20 minutes of trailers with a trailer at each end for A Star Is Born. It was bizarre. I saw many. It looks like it could be okay, but the one we're going to talk about right now was Captain Marvel. That one dropped just this past week, and I don't know. It looks exciting. There's a young Nick Fury. There's a young Agent Coulson in there, and I saw Jude Law in the cast. Don't know what they're all doing there because there was lots of fighting and blasting and
explosions and falling.
Yeah, it seemed more of a teaser trailer, not a lot of plot.
It doesn't really tell you what the movie's going to be about. This is more to get you excited, I think, about the character and the fan service of the prehistory, because this is set in the early 90s, right? Or maybe late 80s, something like that. Cause
yeah. Well,
because it opened on a Blockbuster video.
Yeah. Blockbuster. Richard lost it, because we've talked about, he's also worked at a Blockbuster in the 90s. So,
I was an assistant manager of a Blockbuster video for a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But was that in Greenville?
It was, in fact.
Yeah. He also worked in one in Greenville, but I think we've talked. It was just past. It was just after your time, I think. But I think that's so. Again, our Blockbuster connection. But
yes,
it looked exciting. I like that they didn't I know this is more of a teasery trailer, but I like that it didn't immediately start with and now here's the love interest. Because not just a lot of even superhero movies sometimes they're oh, and then here's the whatever the love interest is, and it's ugh. But I imagine there may be one, but whatever. But I appreciate I thought the trailer was well cut as far as excitement.
Sure.
Yeah, there may not be. I read the comics. So again, if you go to, there's really good videos out there. If I find one, I'll link it. The history of Captain Marvel, and this is the fifth or sixth interpretation. And in the one I read in the late 90s, early 2000s, I don't think there was a love interest. She's just an Air Force captain. She has best friends. She does these zany kind of intergalactic adventures. She's always on call to return to Earth if she needs to. It didn't lose anything for it. I just don't remember her version of what's it, Steve Rogers or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I love the Steve.
So
if only she.
So what did you think of the trailer?
I'm gonna go see the movie. It was exciting, and it had our characters that we love.
Yeah, I gotta say I was a little disappointed. I think they oversold it. We waited months and months and months and months and months with nothing, and then they had this whole we're going to wreck the internet with this news release, and it turned out to be the cover of Entertainment Magazine. Okay, didn't wreck the internet.
Oh yeah, where she's in that pose.
Yeah, and then they're really trying to make this a big thing, and I think it would have been a big thing if it had been 5 or 6 or 8 years ago. But we literally have 30 superhero movies out. And you also can't claim oh my god, we finally have a woman in a superhero movie, because we already had one. It wasn't a Marvel movie, but it was a well-received movie with a female lead. So they seem to keep pushing this is just amazing. And I'm show me. And this is just a teaser trailer. I don't... they could, because, it's not, the special effects aren't done. A lot of stuff isn't done yet.
Yeah, I don't know what the story is going to be. I mean,
so I'll go see it with the rest of you, obviously. It's one of my favorite characters. I always liked Captain Marvel, including the new interpretation. I like that she was this cosmic hero. I thought it was so cool. So
I'm worried that they're going to, in the way that Iron Fist was, the first season was rushed to get to the Defenders.
Yes.
I'm worried about... I'm going to go see Captain Marvel. I think it's going to be fine because obviously they have more time and they're taking more care with this because it's a different situation.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to be the kind of thing where they're just setting up so much to bring her into
the Avengers,
the fourth Avengers movie.
Now, also, I've heard some funny. I don't know if I totally agree, but some funny criticism of Brie Larson. And part of it's like, again, the trailer's just a tease, and they don't really have that much with her because they want to hold that back to get you to watch it. Like, what is she really capable of? But I don't think she smiles even once in the whole trailer. And so one of the criticisms is, and I quote the guy, he's like, she looks like a mother that would really like to speak with a manager right now.
The one I saw was, it looks like she's got all of the acting chops of Kristen Stewart. And so...
Actually, Kristen Stewart is actually pretty good when you give her something to do.
Right,
and
when you give her an interesting role.
Is that they're not showing us what she's got yet, because this was just to build excitement about the character. This wasn't a...
But I really hope they let her smile. I hope at some point she can crack a joke, have a beard, laugh. I mean, she's got to be human here. Yeah. And the trailer is just like this stony-faced... The world is ending. So I'm serious now.
Like, don't go Superman.
So
don't
dark.
Go Superman.
Are you sure you're not from the DC universe?
I know.
DC universe, yeah.
But as long as we're talking about strong women smiling, it's Mary Poppins Returns, starring Emily Blunt as the title character. I saw the
and Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Well, it does, but I mean, it's got an all-star cast. Those are the two biggest, parts that we were seeing, but Colin Firth, Meryl Streep, Emily Mortimer, Dick Van Dyke, Angela Lansbury, Julie Walters, and on and on and on, including Ben Whishaw, who was Q in the recent James Bond movies.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he was the voice of Paddington Bear, so he's already got his in for Kids Lit. But so he is playing Michael Banks, the kid from the original Mary Poppins, and his sister is helping him with his kids because his wife died. And so they have...
So it's like a Full House
situation. And so they have moved back into the family manse where the first original Mary Poppins took place, and Mary Poppins returns to take care of the Banks children and their children. So... looks charming. I love Emily Blunt. I love Lin-Manuel Miranda. There's a lot of CGI dancing animation penguins, just like there was in the original. I'm not sure.
And what I love is that they kept a hand-drawn animation style, which I was very impressed with, because I appreciate that they did that so that it has some of the look and feel.
Right,
even
the continuity is kind of the same. That she's taking them back into the same imaginary worlds. As much as it can have continuity. That's right.
Yeah, and it has songs. I wouldn't call it a musical, but just like the original, they at least implied there was going to be some full-on song numbers.
I want some big penguin dance numbers. That's what I'm here for.
If you've got Lin-Manuel Miranda in the cast, there had better be some singing going on. So we'll see how this works in the MPEU.
Yes, exactly.
The Travers.
That's right.
That would be funny. So, Jeb, were you able to do any reviews for us?
This is your review? Well, you're late.
Well, back we've had to put off taping a couple of times, and so I did this a couple of weeks ago. I noticed on Amazon Prime that The Watchmen is up as one of the Amazon Prime choices. Now,
yep. I just want to put out, I also watched it a couple weeks ago on Amazon Prime.
I missed the memo, so.
Yeah, specifically I wanted to see the director's cut. It's got, 30, 40 more minutes.
I watched the original so that I could get what it felt like, the movie that I originally saw. Because in 2009, we saw it together, Steve, and it's no secret, yes. I hated it. Just awful. But it's become kind of a geek favorite, and so I wanted to revisit it and see if I was just reacting to the differences from the comic. So then I watched it once, and then I actually went back and watched the director's cut again because it had the Tales from the Black Freighter animation, interstitial animation in between sections of the story, and voiced by Gerard Butler.
The version I saw didn't have that.
Oh, well then maybe you need to look at the ultimate cut because.
Oh my god!
That must be what I'm missing.
No, I literally just face palmed. I'm just like, oh my god, there's so much. Was this Zack Snyder? Who directed this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It was also why
Yes.
he got the DCEU.
Was
because of this and the movie
wasn't
300.
Sucker Punch?
No, I don't think so.
Well,
I actually liked Sucker Punch.
I liked things
so.
about it, but let's not get.
That's fair. That's a whole other. I think we've even talked about that at least twice.
So anyway,
yeah.
There's a problem with
rewatching Watchmen. I have to say that story-wise, it's pretty solid. That they keep it moving forward. They link together a bunch of good set pieces, and they have a reason why everything is happening that makes sense internally. It's got its own internal logic. It's great. And the opening sequence, I had forgotten about the opening sequence where they're doing the slow-mo, vignettes of the old Watchmen, the Night Owl and the Silk Spectre and Hooded Justice and all those guys, and it's showing them fighting crime in the classic, Golden Age sense and things like that, while Bob Dylan's The Times They Are A-Changin' is playing. And it's,
in my opinion, one of the greatest openings ever because it gives you the whole backstory. This whole new world, and this explains what went before.
And so, I had forgotten that opening because of the rest of the movie.
That sounds more interesting than I would have assumed. I've never seen it, and I read most of the Watchmen graphic novel, but I kept thinking, I hate all of the characters, and I want them to die. And they kept not dying, except for Bernard, the news guy,
right.
liked him. The newsstand guy, but I haven't seen the movie. But the way you described it made me think, at least the beginning sounds.
Yeah,
pretty
you might want to give it just watch at least the opening because you're not getting any of the character of it. You're just getting the look and the feel and stuff like that, and some of the backstory on the world, which is cool.
I'm going to do a fan edit of Watchmen where I cut out all of the speaking.
Well, see, but then when it comes right down to it, I still hated this movie. And it's because it's Zack Snyder all over, and I have no love for his style. It's got tons of just soulless CGI. I mean, it does not feel real. He pays a lot of attention to the details, getting the frames of the movie to look like the frames of the comic. Which,
yes.
Okay, I can understand why you're doing that, but the fact that he's paying attention to that, he is paying no attention to the human emotions. I never felt a connection to any of these characters, like they were really feeling anything. And that's especially true in the theatrical version without the extra footage. You've got this world-girdling conspiracy with superpowers and supermen and supervillains all doing things, and just like in, I guess it was not Justice League, but also the Batman versus Superman, and even the latest Superman movie, they're blowing things up. And you're never really connected with the people who are living in those places. I never really got the feel that those people were being affected or that there were any stakes other than just, great CGI. Now, with the added footage, you do spend more time with Bernard, the newsman, and with the kid who's reading the comic, at least in the ultimate cut. And the kid's reading the comic, and then they do the animated Black Freighter. And so there are at least a couple of humans who are actually affected by this thing. And that helped a little, but not enough. Not enough. And then...
Yeah. My take from my recent rewatch was that some of the actors weren't powerful enough. Billy Crudup, I like him. I don't think he exuded the kind of menacing level of power that Dr. Manhattan needed to do.
A very light and airy voice. I always
Aloofy.
My wife even said that. Lisa said, why is he speaking like that? Why is he talking so softly?
His voice should resonate with unearthly power. And it didn't.
Right.
I didn't think that.
And the guy who plays Ozymandias,
I think is his name.
It turns out he's a British actor. My wife recognized from a bunch of British TV shows, and I'm like, I didn't know that. And he doesn't come off as this devastating intellect. He comes off as kind of this pompous ass, which is totally different than I am the smartest man in the world, and I outsmarted, this walking god.
And then even Night Owl just kind of seemed to be going through the motions. And so that's the kind of thing that I mean is that Zack Snyder has a great eye for the image, even though that soulless CGI just kind of grates on me, he still can really put together a frame, but then he doesn't really care about the people who are in it. And that's where this fell down. And then Tales from the Black Freighter just sucked. It was awful. Every minute that animation was on, I wished I wasn't watching it. It was just terrible.
Really? I bought the DVD after the movie came out, and that came as a bonus. And so I have like the bonus DVD of Tales from the Black Freighter. I watched it once years ago. I don't remember it. I don't know. Whatever. It's difficult to explain how it makes more sense in the comic book. Like when you read the comic, they would switch to this inner comic. So like the boy's reading a comic, and that's what they've switched to. But that the story in the comic was a parallel. Like the man who tries to save his home and his family becomes the very monsters he's trying to save them from. At the end, the Black Freighter calls to him, and I thought that was, this wonderfully well done, and they couldn't
replicate.
What do you call it? The sense, the kind of the dread. Also, there's a history of horror comics, like the EC, horror comics that came out in the 60s and 70s. Which this had the look of in the comic book, looked like those old-fashioned Tales from the Crypt Keeper, but the animation
and that's
doesn't
what
have
I mean, is that it just does not do it. It doesn't. So, I was talking it over with Matt Johnson, friend of the podcast, and what he said said was, Watchmen, it's fine, and then that's damning with faint praise. But I think it's less than fine. I think it's not a good movie. It's really cool to look at, but there's more than just looking at the spectacle, and it doesn't achieve it for me. So there we go. Watchmen Revisited. Don't make me watch it again. Madison, how about you? Any good budget bin games?
Big fun.
Small price.
I'm trying to bang a ghost.
Steve, what weird anime are you watching?
No, I wrest back control. I have been playing Monster Prom. It is a multiplayer dating sim / visual novel. So it's a little bit more expensive than I usually try to go like $10 or less. This one's $12, but you can get it via Steam for PC, Mac, Linux. It was released earlier this year by Beautiful Glitch. But the coolest thing, so y'all know I love dating sims. I love them. I think they're great. I love visual novels. But this is really unique and really interesting because you can play a single player campaign, but it's multiplayer, and it is designed to be played. The whole game sequence can be completed in fact, when you launch it, it gives you an option to play the short version or the long version. And the short version, even with multiplayer, is about 30 minutes, and the long version is about an hour. And it's designed to be played like on a co-op, like couch co-op with your friends. And it's really unique and really interesting. So it's like a party game. But the idea is that you and your friends pick your avatars, and you're in a monster high school, but everyone's in their 20s. Just let it happen. And you can either play cooperatively by like kind of helping each other be a wingman for your friend, or you can screw each other over. And the cast of characters is just irreverent and weird, and if you like kind of funny horror tropes, things like and it's cheesy too, but it's really self-aware. It's like the ghost that I just was in love with was called Polygeist. And then like there's a Medusa character that's like a businesswoman, and the dumb jock is a big werewolf, and there's a hipster vampire and like fire demon. Like it's just, y'all, it's hard for me to even describe. I just love this so much. My friend Ginger came over and we actually played a campaign together, and there's a YouTube video of that we'll link in the show notes. But y'all, I just want to say that there are 4 hosts to this podcast, and it's a 4-player game. So I think that maybe we should try and schedule Monster Prom, because you can play not only couch co-op, but online multiplayer if everybody buys a copy of the game. So like you can play with friends. What I like about it is that the same kind of thing I like about like MOBAs, like Heroes of the Storm, is that you can complete a session in about 20 minutes. And I like that this gives you a endpoint, and it even has like a little status bar along the bottom so you know how far along in the story campaign you are, which makes it's just extremely well designed as a party game.
Sounds like fun. It does.
I would, for the sake of the podcast, I would even try a high school dating sim.
But they're all in their 20s.
Yeah, when I was in my
20-year-old
20s,
monsters.
the last place I wanted to be was my high school. But just saying. But
I just the fact that you can play cooperatively or competitively is just a delight, and it just seems like it was such fun to play with a friend. You know, it's the same kind of thing. There's lots of different endings to achieve. I can't recommend it enough. I really enjoyed it. So if anyone listening gets a copy of the game, I will play with you, because this is really fun. Like, this is one, I've already replayed it several times. Like, some of the games I review, I kind of play it for like a few hours and like, okay, this is fine. But this is one that's already been revisited, and I'm just desperately trying to get my husband to play with me. But,
that's awesome. And is this a play-along link?
Yeah, it's a Let's Play. So,
Let's Play.
Yes. It's me and Ginger played a full campaign. Ginger Snaps is out of Virginia, and she's an Iraqi shadow caste there. So, she tried to, the one she was trying to date was the Liam, the hipster vampire, and I was trying to date Polly, the party girl ghost. But I did not do well. I did
cute.
bad. I did very badly. Like, she was just like, no. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should have trusted my instincts more. Oh, the other cool thing is if you're kind of like, it has like a D&D Light sort of feel, in that you, your character has stats that you can, or like RPG Light, you can kind of, increase or things increase or decrease your character stats, that you establish your character stats by taking like a cosmopolitan style ABC quiz, to establish. It's actually, it's really cool, and like it has like this like cheesy veneer, but it's a really smartly designed game. So I've gone on about it too much, but you should play it. Monster Prom, good stuff.
All right,
excellent, wonderful.
How about the weird anime, Steve?
スティーブはとってもくだらない人でアニメを見るんです。What weird anime is Steve watching this week?
So, I watched a 12-episode series called Ryo's Work Is Never Done. It's another shogi series. Shogi is kind of a Japanese chess. This is the second series I've watched, and I don't know if they receive money from the Shogi Association, because again, a lot of it seems like advertisement for the game of shogi. They explain some of a few of the rules, but a lot about the association and the history and stuff. So it's a little bit like chess in that you have like kings and pawns and knights, but the pieces are just wooden tiles with characters painted on them. The board isn't checkered, but it's a graph, 9x9 squares. And then it has characters that are not in the European chess. It has, which I guess I shouldn't say that, because I believe chess's origin is actually from India. So I should say the Indian chess. But, like it has like a green general, a silver general, a gold general. So definitely different types of pieces and some different rules. In any case, the main character is this 16-year-old boy who is a master shogi player, and Ryo is the title he's earned. And he's a professional, as in he earns money, a salary for being this position. And he gets paid by the Shogi Association. But you have to earn it through playing, series of tournaments through years in order to reach them. But he's a 16-year-old who now lives on his own and has his own salary, and this is his life. And then he comes home one day, and there's this 9-year-old girl who says, "I want to be your disciple." And he's like, what? And she says, "You have to keep your promise. You promised me." And he doesn't remember it. And then they flash back, and it was the tournament in which he won his Ryo title. He was completely physically and mentally drained. And he's walking through the hallway, and he collapses, and she brings him a glass of water. And he says, "I'll give you anything in thanks. I'm so grateful that you were able to do this." But then he immediately forgets about it. And the thing that you wanted was to be his student. Let's say disciple, but it's like a mentor position in the world of shogi. So some of the interesting stuff I'd never heard before, and I guess it's, even in the show they say it's old-fashioned and they don't really do it this way any longer. But by tradition, you become the child of your master. They actually sign guardianship documents with the parents.
What?
And so this 9-year-old moves in with him and becomes his de facto, daughter.
Yeah, that's weird.
Okay. And then he and another student have the same master.
I just want to
Yeah. So he has a fellow student, a young woman, and since they both have the same master, he and this young woman are like brother and sister. So he actually calls her sister. And then, this whole thing, he himself has a master who's older, and he doesn't live there anymore because he's a professional, but he always goes back there for advice and for help doing research on tactics. And so they have this whole bizarre, pseudo-family based on this relationship about who's the master, who's become the student, when the student breaks off and becomes their own, etc. So I thought that was really interesting. One of the weird things which they play at for humor is the weird age difference. And so he's 16 and she's 9. And so there's a bunch of embarrassing stuff happens and everyone's like, oh, I didn't know you were into little girls. And he's like, no, it's a total misunderstanding. That's not what you think. And then it's like, ha, that's hilarious.
Pedophilia is great for a joke.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's cringy. So just for the record, it's a very chaste show. There's nothing... They use it as humor. They don't use it. There isn't anything really going on.
Japanese chaste?
Well, I guess it's Japanese
or anime
chaste.
Chaste, I should say.
So apparently they don't. I don't know. My guess is that they don't see the same kind of horror or whatever in the humor, the joke. It's his massive embarrassment over the misunderstanding is the source of humor. Mm-hmm. But of course, his student brings over all of her friends from school, so he comes home and there's 4 little girls playing shogi, and they all jump on him, and all this crazy stuff happens, and that's when the girl who's his quote-unquote sister comes over, and she gets upset that these little girls are on him, and he's like, oh, you misunderstand, ha. So it's just weird. The story itself is really nice. The way he supports his student, the things they learn about life, the way she helps him defend his title, I thought was very well done. The stuff you learn about the association and the ranking system. And there's this kind of a light love triangle. There's an older student who also, I don't know if it's with his master or someone else, but it's a woman who's 25. And you have to achieve professional status by 26 or you get kicked out. It's that's a time limit. You either did it or you didn't do it. You can stay an amateur forever. And so she's coming up to the end of it. She's not quite good enough to make it. And so she's 25 years old. She's got a 1 year left to get enough wins in order to make that criteria. He really likes her. I mean, really. Mm-hmm. He comes out a couple times and I'd love to take you, And maybe because he's so much younger than her, she just brushes it off. Oh, whatever. And of course you're going to say that. You should really be going out with so-and-so. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the girl who's his sister in shogi likes him.
Oh.
And the same thing. He's she even leads in for a kiss at one point, and he's right about to do it, and then he's like, you're just teasing me, aren't you? You shouldn't be so cruel. And then he walks away. So, that's she wants him, he wants this older woman, blah. But the show is, it's only 12 episodes. Nothing really comes of any of this stuff. I liked it. It was a cool kind of nothing supernatural happens. It's a slice of life in this interesting world of, professional shogi players. I thought it was worth it with the caveat that it has that weird kind of risque humor.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Awesome. Well, even though I joined the cast late, we're still way over the time we allotted because it was a big, fat, juicy show tonight. So let us
yes.
let us adjourn and head to Problem with Your Face Land. Steve, how will they follow us there?
Please see our website, aitrpodcast.com. Full show notes for all the media we mentioned, including the video game that Madison reviews, and then links to all our social media, including Twitter, Facebook, and Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get twice the content.
So, it's good to be back. I hope you enjoyed the big, fat AITR cast tonight, and then come on over and join us on There's a Problem with Your Face. Until then, I'm Jeb Brack.
I'm Madison Metricula, Robert.
And this was Tech Guy Steve.